Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling a book that's going to make you rethink, well, pretty much everything you thought you knew about startups and what it takes to succeed. We're diving into Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. Right off the bat, Thiel hits you with this really powerful idea. He says, look, copying something that already works, that just takes the world from 1 to n. It's incremental. But real progress, the kind of innovation that actually changes things, that comes from creating something totally new. And that right there is what he means by going from 0 to 1. Okay, so if just copying what Bill Gates or Larry Page did isn't the answer, what is? How do you actually build the future? Well, Thiel says it all boils down to answering one very specific and, pretty contrarian question. And this is it. This is the question. Thiel is convinced that the secret to building the future starts right here. He makes this great point. Having a brilliant idea is one thing, but having the guts to actually act on it, especially when no one else agrees with you, that's what's really rare. Because think about it. The best, most valuable paths are always the ones that haven't been paved yet. They're new, they're untried. Okay, let's really dive into his core philosophy here. All right, so the whole foundation of Thiel's thinking really rests on this big distinction he makes between two totally different kinds of progress. So going from 0 to 1, that's the pure act of creation. He calls it vertical or intensive progress. The perfect example is this. Imagine you have a typewriter. Making more typewriters is not 0 to 1, but inventing the very first word processor, that is a massive leap. It's a brand new category of thing. And for Thiel, that is what technology really means. And here's where he really lays out the two paths for the future. On one hand, you've got 1 to n, which he calls globalization. That's just taking something that works in one place and copying it everywhere else. Think building 100 typewriters. On the other hand, you have 0 to 1, technology, doing brand new things, taking that typewriter and building a word processor. Thiel's big argument is that while we're all focused on globalization, it's actually technology, that vertical progress, that's way more important. Why? Because just spreading old ideas around isn't going to cut it forever. To really build a better future, we need to invent new things. Okay, get ready for this next part. This is Thiel's first really contrarian truth, and it's a big one. It's an idea that basically takes a sledgehammer to one of the most fundamental beliefs we have about business and economics. And here it is. Competition is for losers. Yeah, you heard that right. It's a total bombshell. He says, we've got it all wrong. Capitalism and competition, he argues, are polar opposites. Think about it. In a market with perfect competition, every company is fighting over scraps, and all the profits eventually get competed away. So if you want to build a business that actually lasts and creates real value, you have to find a way to escape that brutal fight. Remember in Econ 101 where they told us perfect competition was the ideal state? Well, from a business owner's perspective, that's a nightmare. It's a death sentence. It's just a constant, brutal struggle to survive. So for Thiel, the goal isn't to be the best competitor. The goal is to become so unique and so good at what you do that you don't have any real competitors. You create what he calls a creative monopoly. And this chart just shows it perfectly. Take 2012, for example. Google, which basically had a monopoly on search, was enjoying a super healthy 21% profit margin. Now, compare that to the entire U.S. airline industry, a textbook example of brutal competition. Their average margin? A tiny razor-thin 0.2%. I mean, let that sink in. For every dollar of revenue, Google was making more than 100 times the profit of an entire industry. That's the power of monopoly versus competition. Right there. So here's the funny thing, or maybe the crazy thing. Thiel says that to understand the business world, you have to realize everyone is lying, just in opposite ways. The monopolist, they lie by pretending they're not a monopoly. They want to avoid government scrutiny, so they'll say something like, oh, we're just a small fish in the huge pond of global advertising, right? Then you have the non-monopolists, the struggling businesses. They lie by exaggerating how unique they are. They'll say, we're the only British restaurant in Palo Alto. They define their market super narrowly to sound like a monopoly. And this core deception from both sides just completely messes up how we see everything. Okay, so building one of these creative monopolies, it's obviously not something that just happens by accident, right? It takes a real plan, a bold, deliberate one. And that line of thinking leads us right into Thiel's next big challenge. This one is about how we view the future itself. Is success just a roll of the dice? Is it just luck? Or is it something you can actually design and build? A matter of skill? You hear it all the time, right? Successful people saying, "Oh, I was just lucky." But Thiel pushes back hard on that. He says, no, you are not a lottery ticket. The future isn't just some random series of events that you have to react to. It's something you can and absolutely should design. It requires a definite plan. And he lays out these different views of the future in this really interesting 4-quadrant grid. For example, definite optimism is believing the future will be better because you have a plan to make it so. Think of the US in the 50s and 60s, building the interstate system, the Apollo program. You can also have definite pessimism, like in modern China, where the plan is to prepare for a bleak future. But here's his big warning. He says the West, and especially the US today, has slipped into what he calls indefinite optimism. We're just kind of optimistic that things will get better on their own, but we've stopped making the grand, concrete plans to actually make it happen. And when you think about it, this shift from a definite to an indefinite mindset, it really explains a lot about our world today. Why do so many bright people go into finance or law? Because those fields are about process, about rearranging existing value. It's an indefinite path. Compare that to the definite mindset of an engineer or a founder who has a bold, concrete plan to create something new. It also explains the whole lean startup movement. Iterate, pivot, adapt. It's all about reacting, not about executing a grand vision from day one. One's about adapting to the future. The other is about building it. All right, so if you need a definite plan, what actually goes into it? Well, Thiel says it's not enough to just have an amazing product. Your plan has to include something that, tragically, a lot of tech founders completely forget about. He calls it the secret weapon for actually getting your product into people's hands. I mean, we see this all the time. So many brilliant engineers, so many product people, they fall into that field of dreams trap, right? If I build a great product, customers will just show up. Thiel's warning here is stark. That is a dangerous, dangerous delusion. How you sell your product, your distribution, is every bit as critical as the product itself. And here's the thing about distribution. It also follows what's called a power law. What does that mean? It means that one of your sales channels, whether it's viral marketing, a direct sales team, whatever, one of them is going to work so much better than all the others combined. So the secret isn't to do a little bit of everything. The secret is to test, find that one single channel that dominates, and then pour all of your resources into it. And of course, the right channel completely depends on what you're selling. I mean, think about it. If you're SpaceX and you're selling rocket launches to NASA for hundreds of millions of dollars, you're not going to run a Super Bowl ad, right? That requires what Thiel calls complex sales. This is where the CEO, maybe for months or even years, has to personally build relationships to close just 1 or 2 massive deals. The product dictates the distribution. Okay, so let's pull it all together. We've talked about why we need to create totally new things, why we should aim for a monopoly, why we need a definite plan, and why we have to nail distribution. All of this, it leads to one final, powerful idea. The belief that really holds this whole philosophy together. And the biggest secret of all, it's not really about markets or tactics or business plans. It's about us. It's about our own power to act. And that secret is this: the future has to be built. It's not something that just passively happens to us. It doesn't arrive on its own. It has to be imagined first and then deliberately, painstakingly created. We are the ones who have to build it. We're the architects. And this is why he's so focused on startups. For Thiel, a startup is the biggest thing you can do where you can have definite mastery. It's the ultimate expression of your personal agency. It's a chance to take control of one small but really important piece of the world and build it according to your vision. So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this final, powerful idea. It's not just a thought, it's really an instruction. You are not a lottery ticket. So reject the idea that your future is just up to chance. Believe that a definite, better future is possible. And then, and this is the most important part, go out and start building it. Go from 0 to 1.